Hi, good evening. Welcome once again to the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show. We also coming to you live on YouTube. You could get it there on the Guyanese Critic page or TBN, Daybreak News, wherever you are. Good night, good morning. It's always a pleasure joining you in your room, in the car, wherever you are. And if you're on the roadways listening to us, tuning in with us, we want to say be very careful on the roads. It's traffic danger out there, and we always have to be on the lookout. It has been a very busy week for everybody, and I know that people eyes. When I was a reporter, everybody ears and eyes were glued to the television, listening to the radio as the debate within Parliament heats up for during budget. You're going to see the skills of our parliamentarians at the best, and you could hear some wisecracks coming across and all the jabs and the punches being thrown there. Next week it's heading into the heart of business where people are going to be questioned. The government is going to be questioned about the expenses and expenditures, why you spending this and so on. So let's pay attention to that because there has been a lot of talks about this budget, the biggest ever. It's over 700 million, Freddie. 700 billion, sorry, and lots of money to be spent, and people want to know where it's going to be spent and how is it going to be benefiting them. Tonight I want to say good night to my friend Freddie Kissoon, my co-host Freddie Kissoon, and he's going to introduce our guest, a man who's been decades in politics in Guyana, lots of institutional knowledge, one of the strong supporters as well as, how you say it, members of the People's Progressive Party, who's been organizing logistics and a whole bunch of other things, serving some very key positions. Freddie Kissoon, over to you, sir.
Hi there, thanks for being with us. This is our 7th month, and on behalf of the company, Daybreak News and Leonard Gildarie, thanks for enduring with us 7 months. When I read out the curriculum vitae of our guests, we're talking about fantastic institutional memory. 75% of our population is under 45. 50% of our population is between 18 and 19. A people that do not know its history will never be free. And in these programs, we try to bring history to our young population. We try as much as possible for our guests to speak about what happened in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, spanning 50 years gone by. Our guest this evening, before I give you his name, I'd like to read out his curriculum vitae. He became a member of the People's Progressive Party in the 70s. That would make him one of the longest serving party card-bearing member of the PPP. I went through my list and I come up with 8 of them from the 70s. He was for 11 years the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Education. Then he moved on to become deputy head of the Presidential Secretariat, serving under Dr. Roger Luncheon. Then he moved on to permanent secretary in the Ministry of Health. Then he moved on to administrative head of the Public Service. And from 1997, he was elected to the leadership of the People's Progressive Party. The leading layer of the People's Progressive Party is the Central Committee. All decisions after Congress have to be approved or endorsed by the Central Committee of the PPP. He was a Central Committee member first elected in 1997. He is currently a Central Committee member of the PPP, and he holds the status of chairman of the board of the Chedijagan Research Institute, known to the older folks of Guyana as Red House. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Guyanese, wherever you are, our guest this evening is Mr. Hydar Ali. Hydar, thanks for being here, and I want to say to our viewers, we've never had a guest on this program with a short jack. So this reminds me of the era of Burnham, his short jack. This is the time of where they dominated the 70s
No, but the
in
short
Guyana.
jacket used to be polyester back in those days, if my memory serves me correct.
This is
Yes,
cotton, this is
linen,
cotton.
is linen cotton kind
This
of.
looks like it come from India.
But short jack is
Yeah.
a style.
It's a style, right,
not
right,
the
right.
fabric.
But you rarely see it like that. I don't
Well, you know,
know.
Freddie, I must tell you this, that throughout my years in the public service,
Decades.
decades, thank you, I have never gone to work without a short jacket. For some reason, I feel comfortable. I'm not too comfortable with the kind of attire that you have there.
Okay.
You know, especially in this tropical climate. But that's
This is the air
beside-
conditioned room. I feel in cold.
But I want
Anyway,
to take this opportunity.
You were born a mic then.
I want to take this
He
opportunity.
invented the short jack.
Yeah, I am told so, but you know, somehow I find it very.
No, I don't believe so.
You don't like a short jacket?
No, no, I like. In fact, I might have to get a couple because the ties are becoming a problem to me now. I can't stand the heat.
Yeah, but I want
you
to
joke
just.
yourself.
I want to take this opportunity to Freddie. But I must thank you for those very nice, kind words of introduction. But I must thank you and Gildarie too for the show you're having. You said this is your 7th month, and you are already making an impact. I can tell you that there's, from what I can know, there's a lot of people watching the show.
I forget to tell our viewers we knew each other since the 70s.
Since the 70s. And I remember you at
So
the
we were both dinosaurs.
Yeah.
He said it. I didn't say it.
Well, I would rather say we are advancing in age, right? But I remember you when I was a student at the University of Guyana, and you used to go to the university with the slippers,
Yeah.
and that slippers had a little band behind your foot to prevent it from
Yeah.
from falling out or something. And you know, it occurred to me how much we have advanced over that period, the university. But that is a different issue. And if you have time, we can talk a little.
Oh, I will talk. I
about
want
the
your views on
University
what
of Guyana.
I want your views on what the university is a recalcitrant organization that would not democratize. But having listed your curriculum vitae, where you have a letter yesterday in the papers which we need to discuss because we do not get guests very often that can elaborate on the complexities of international relations. And you have a very interesting letter which there are snippets of sentiments in that letter from Clement Rohi and Donald Ramatar. And now we have you writing on it. Rohi has been expansive on what is going on in Ukraine, so is Donald Ramatar. We will ask you for your take on Ukraine because it appears it is not what it appears to be to the average person. But I have said enough, and with that elaboration on your curriculum vitae, I'm sure Gildarie have some questions in his.
Well, there's a
already.
question on the table. Well, let us go right into it. You would have been for years in the public service. I think you retired in 2015 as head of the public service under the APNO FC government. And strange enough, as I was reading, and I could recall seeing the article come out, and I said, wow, here we have a government, and this is the now in opposition, APNO FC, while in government, they recognize Hydar, who is a PPP executive member, for his sterling contribution to the public service. And that I found was pretty interesting. But coming forward in 2023 here, the role of the public sector would always be something that is up for discussion. Are we in a place where we want to be? What should be done to improve, to take it to the level that we could say we're world class, world standards? I want to ask you, sir, right away, what is wrong with the public service and why have we not gotten right? If you were in a position, what would you say that needs to be done? Maybe but 5 things that needs to be done.
Well, the public service, I would say, has served this country well over the period. And we inherited what I would call the Westminster model of public service management in this country. Because, and the public service model that we inherited was based on a high level of professionalism, where public servants were supposed to be, to begin with, politically neutral, right? But as we know, this is a highly politicized society, and so often a lot of positions, especially at the senior level, were based on appointments by the president or so. And we have a situation now where a lot of the employees are on contract employees, as opposed to being appointed by the Public Service Commission. And in some ways, that may have resulted in a lack of the kind of professionalism, for want of a better word, that used to happen in the past. But to a large extent, the politicization of the public service began way back during the Barnum period, when a lot of these public servants have to be exposed to all kinds of training programs, ideological programs, the Kuru College and the Barnum Ideological Institute. And a lot of these appointments were not made on the basis of merit. In other words, people were not appointed on the basis of the qualification, the academic qualification. A lot of these people were appointed on the basis of party card.
Right.
And those were the days, as both of you will know, where there was the party paramountcy. And the party paramountcy doctrine was one in which the party cards appear to have had more weight than
Qualifications or experience.
qualification. Right. And all of that, I believe, helped to undermine the professionalism of the public service and the neutrality that the public service ought to offer. So I think there has been some progress over the years, I would say. A lot of training programs are taking place to raise the level of professionalism of the public servants. And but this is an ongoing work, and it will take some time. But to answer your question directly, I think the public service today is becoming much more professional, if I may use that term.
Would that not, just a quick follow-up on that, would you say that the Guyanese, the majority of Guyanese, and this is what I've been hearing, and Freddie would have probably been hearing, we've been taking calls on this program for the last 7 months, and generally people complain about NIS and the state when they go in, people filing their nails, people on the phone, chewing gum, eating food, till you come back. Doesn't this contradict when you use the word professionalism as to where we are? While there might have been improvements, we're still far, far away from where it should be.
Well, I would say that some of that do exist, and that is the reason why I'm saying there is need for more work to be done to raise the level of professionalism in the public service. But as I said, this is a work in progress, and I think that we are getting there. But it will take some time. But and I said too when I addressed the commission that was set up, because they asked me as a former permanent secretary to give some views, and I made it clear that this environment that we live in here is highly politicized, and political neutrality in the context of our existing politics is something of an ideal. It won't happen because governments always look to people who they feel they can.
Loyalists?
Well, loyalists and people who they believe will be more professional to carry out the kind of programs and policies that they have. So, as I said, this is a work in progress, and I guess it will take time before we reach that, in quote, ideal state that we really want to be.
Thank you, Freddie.
Hydar, I am going to start my question in January 2023. Although there's so much to discuss. We're not going to get into the hour because look at your curriculum vitae. But 3 persons have taken a different position on the Ukrainian war. That is the former president of Guyana, Donald Rumsfeld, the former Foreign Minister Clement Rohi, and a very well-known political activist and politician, Virginia Besessa, formerly of the PPP, then formerly of the AFC. Now, you have a letter yesterday, and I'm going to ask you, first, I'm going to ask you an awkward question, then we're going to get into Ukraine. Aren't you afraid when you write those things and give that unique, independent perspective of the Ukrainian situation? Aren't you afraid of your American visa be not extended? Because the Americans are leading the thing against the Russians.
Well, I
They're
don't
sending
know.
tanks.
I don't know that I said anything in that letter that should be offensive to the United States or any Western power for that matter. All I said, if you will allow me to just
Sure.
paraphrase what I said. I said that first of all, I am of the view, maybe my view may not concur with a lot of my comrades, but I believe that the decision by Russia to invade Ukraine was a mistake and should not have happened. And it's a violation. And in this regard, I am in line with the position that the CARICOM has taken on the matter that it is wrong to invade a country, to violate the territorial integrity of a country. So that position I have maintained, because we have a territorial problem in this country too, and we can't have a situation where, let's say, Venezuela.
But in that letter, you saying that sending tanks should have been, diplomacy should have taken preference to sending tanks.
I still hold that view that the solution to the problem between Russia and Ukraine cannot be won on the battlefield. I said that already, because that is fraught with so many kinds of dangers. We are already seeing what's happening to Ukraine. But, and if this continues for a couple of months, I don't know what will remain of Ukraine. And with all the tanks and everything that is now the sophisticated tanks that are being sent, that will not, in my view, help to solve the problem, because it will lead to an escalation of the conflict, and it could lead to disaster. It could even lead, Freddie, to a nuclear war. And we got to watch that, because don't rule out the possibility that this war could degenerate to a point where it could even result in a nuclear war.
But the former president, Mr. Ramatar, the former finance minister, Mr. Rohi, and the former foreign minister,
yeah.
and the former AFC top guy, Besessa, they are saying that this thing is not clear-cut. NATO kept pushing itself since the fall of the USSR without looking at Russia's security demands. They kept expanding NATO when, with the fall of the Cold War, there should have been a better understanding of Russian security concerns. And Russia has its security concerns that the Western powers did not really take into consideration. You hold that view?
I share the view that there is a security concern by Russia, especially with the eastward movement of the NATO very close to the Russian border, right? And so that's in my view, a legitimate concern of Russia. But my take on it is that even that is the case, to invade a country in these modern times, we have international laws and all kinds of conflict resolution measures within the framework of the United Nations and all of that. I still feel that that is no justification to move into a sovereign state and well, like what is happening, you know.
But I think most people, I certainly do not agree with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But what I could remember earlier when he spoke on Saturday, Gildarie spoke about his rejection of what Russian. But I would like to see Russian pull out of Ukraine. I would like to see enter the war. But you can't have Israel bombing Syria. Israel bombs. That's a sovereign country, man.
Yes, but that doesn't legitimize
No,
what is
no,
happening.
it doesn't.
One wrong doesn't.
Right. But I'd like to see more pressure put on Israel.
Of course, I would like to see that too. Look what is happening right now, you know. And I think
They
we
just
should
killed
be-
9
they killed
Palestinians.
9. So that can never be right, and I'm vehemently opposed to that too. But I'm saying one should not
Yes, of
justify
course, of
the
course. Gildarie?
Thank you very much. There is a raging debate going on social media right now with our National Security Advisor, Captain Jerry Govile. He was, I think, in Trinidad early this week, and he met a young guy, and he said, I read for you what he posted that triggered out some very big debate. He said he met on Monday a Guyanese man for the first time. His name is Deepak Lal, born in Trinidad to a Guyanese father. He's a Guyanese because his father is a Guyanese. A Guyanese is a Guyanese is a Guyanese. All of us is equal. But this is where he said something that a lot of people jumped on it. I think he included some relatives of government people too. He says that a young man is the holder of a valid Guyanese birth certificate and a valid Guyanese passport. The guy is born in Trinidad to a Guyanese father, but he has a Guyanese birth certificate. So everybody say, how did he get that? You don't have an issue. A lot of people don't have an issue with him having a Guyanese passport, but how did you get a Guyanese birth certificate?
because he wasn't born there.
He wasn't born here.
Yeah.
And so the good national security advisor came back today, and this is what he said, that this explains it, the Constitution, and I'm trying to bring it up. A person born outside Guyana after the commencement of this Constitution shall become a citizen of Guyana at the date of his birth, if at that date his father or his mother is a citizen of Guyana, otherwise by virtue of this article. But that doesn't say anything about a birth certificate. So there's a debate that's happening right there. Now, I brought that forward to you because I want to ask you some questions. We are going to be facing with how strict should we be as a government, and this issues come up in thing. But as a country going forward, our country, and I would be the first one to say, Freddie too, that we have to defend at all times. People come to our country, we've gone to countries all over the world, we open our doors. But to prevent a wholesale, the gates being open, and this is my view of it, are there anything that we need to be careful of? Should we just allow the status quo to continue, or do we need to put some safeguards into place? And if so, what are those safeguards?
Well, I think there are safeguards, and the Home Affairs Ministry don't just allow anybody to come in the country. You have to have the requisite permits and all of that to stay in the country, to work in the country. So I think the safeguards are there. But at the same time, I believe that the opportunities that are now manifesting in the country, we would reach a stage where we have to seek outside technical personnel, laborers even, to come and work in this country. And I will tell you this, we have already reached a stage
If we run out of
where we are running out of laborers.
we don't have.
Look, if you go in the construction sector, there are hardly people you could find now to go and do even manual laborers, not to mention the skills.
Oh, it's
So
crazy.
you don't have carpenters, you don't have masons, you don't have plumbers, you don't have electricians to work. And I can tell you that this is causing a demand for labor, and the costs are going up to what you call the wages of these categories of people. So I think that opportunities in this country have never been better for people to get to elevate, to move up. And I think the government is very aware of this, and they have been doing a fantastic job, if I may say so, in trying to get people on the labor market and on the payroll. This program that the government has introduced through the initiative of the Vice President to have part-time laborers. I think that's a good program. It's impacting directly in terms of putting money in people's pocket, who otherwise don't know where to get the next meal, if I may put it like that. So it's a big program that has been making a big impact in the countryside. There are some people who, I read something about some people saying that because of that, there is a shortage of skills in other areas, in the private sector and all of that. But this is a necessary program. And I think it's one that the government should be given credit for.
Absolutely.
So even though we are having a lot of people coming in from Venezuela because of what's happening there, still there is a deficit in terms of labor in this country.
Thank you very much.
Hydar, this is a young man, so he is not in this conversation.
Yeah.
What I'm about to say, the two of us are troglodytes. We were together at UG when we saw what was happening under Burnham. Burnham established a party office at UG, right at the back there at where the financial office is. Student election used to be rigged at UG. I intervened in the student election, exposed what was going on, and the last bus at UG was 11:30. And that night, some PNC students threw me off the bus. I spent 3 weeks in a hospital that doesn't exist right now at Cummins and Coast Street called Ishri Singh Hospital. You and I saw what happened at UG. You and I saw rigged elections at UG. You and I were young people together protesting rigged elections in our youthful days. And then we become troglodytes in 2020 and have to fight rigged elections again. What about March 2020?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it because, if there is one positive, if I may put that in quotation mark, out of the 2020 elections, was the fact that it exposed the rigging machinery of the PNC. This generation, from 1992 to now, roughly 60% of the population never experienced a rigged election. Because the last most of those people would have been over 30 years now. And they've never experienced a rigged election. This election showed how the rigging was so blatant. And we all know it. And people now begin to see firsthand, as it were, how the rigging machinery took place. Because the PPP always used to say that they, from 1968 right down to 1985, all the elections were rigged, massively, blatantly, and some people never used to believe. I said, man, it's PPP just, saying that. But they have witnessed firsthand the blatant manner in which the elections were rigged, in full view of the international community, local and overseas observers, everybody, the media, everybody watching. And this, I think, is a unprecedented eye-opener for a lot of Guyanese. So the extent that is the case, I think it is something that a lot of Guyanese now begin to think about the PNC. And with all of that, the PNC still is saying that they were cheated out of office, and there's selling a false narrative to the young people, to their supporters, and I believe this is not being helpful to this nation and even to the PNC because they are misleading the young people, their own supporters, as to what is happening, and to the extent that this is the case, I don't know how we can really have this. This kind of politics that the government, the president is asking, the one Guyana vision that we're talking about, So the PNC is making it difficult. I think they have to come clean and admit that there are rigged elections from 1968 right down to 1985.
Do you think that's ever going to happen?
Well, I'm saying the only way forward for this country is that the PNC got to come clean and stop fooling their own supporters.
On the flip side of that, Mr. Ali, I would have, after what transpired in 2020, that elections there, and you look at Parliament and you look at what people would have witnessed and diplomats walking out of Ashman's building and CARICOM people coming in, CARICOM leaders, they would have been very critical of the process and what they would have been seeing, and the evidence was there. And then all through the court, what would have happened. I think it's about 15 court cases or hearings that we would have had. Do you believe that it may be a travesty to the people of Guyana that we're witnessing that as a very key role of the opposition, that they've been denuded because of that 2020 election? Is that something that we should be worried about? Because, I always like a good fight. Me, Gildarie, like a good fight. And so when you don't have competition in the House, you don't have people who, for the sake, there's a leader of the opposition, there's an office for that, and they're supposed to be doing their job as an opposition. Do you believe that they've been denuded because of that 2020 elections?
They have. And I will go further to say that there is now a credibility crisis in the PNC itself and in the way the PNC is viewed by young people, including a lot of their own supporters. So what they have done there is in effect a weakening of their own party. But I don't know whether we are here to discuss the PNC internal
We're here to
politics.
discuss whatever you want to discuss.
Good.
If you want us to move on.
But let me say this. You mentioned what happened to you during your UG days. But this happened to a lot of PPP supporters. I, for example, I grew up in the countryside, in a small village in the country called Nambanad village. Anyone of you know where Nambanad village is
Nambanad
located?
village?
Yes.
North or Nauth?
As a zero.
As a zero, Nought.
N-
Not.
Not number one village, not
North
village.
village?
Yes.
Number not village.
Number 0 village?
I never heard of it.
I know where it is.
Where it is.
Timbuktu.
No. Well, let me tell you, I know a lot of your viewers may not.
Number North village.
Nambanad village.
Number North village? Are you making that
No,
up?
no, no, no.
The man's telling you it exists.
This is official.
There's a man's birthplace.
That's my birthplace. And I wouldn't even ask you to tell me where that village is, because you may be guessing all night and you wouldn't get it.
Skeldon, near Skeldon.
No. Number 9 village is between number 54 and number 55 village. When you go up to Curverton, you reach number 54 village. When you pass number 54 village, there is number 9 village. And then as you go further, you got 55, 56, and go up.
And
there.
it still exists, number North village?
That's the official name.
There
That's
is number North village right now
Right now.
in Region 6?
Yes, Freddie. If you post a letter to me at Namanad village, I will get it. It wouldn't go in outer space. The postman knows exactly where to deliver that letter.
I have the Gazette, that green book with every place in Guyana.
Oh, yes.
I'm going home tonight. to
Well,
look
please
at-
do.
But
And
that's-
call me to
Between number 54 and 55.
It's Namanad. But the point I want to make is that I became involved in the politics at a very early age because my father was a PPP member, an activist. In fact, he was a member of the PPP General Council in those days. The General Council is the equivalent of the Central Committee. And so because of that, a lot of the PPP leaders would come to our home. I remember Kama Janet, Kama Chedi, they would come, spend some time by our home. And I have this first-hand acquaintance, if I may say so, with these leaders from a very, very young age coming up. And I became so influenced by the politics from a very early age. I started selling PPP newspaper, the Mirror newspaper. I became chairman of the PYO group, secretary of the PPP group. And because of my political involvement, I was locked up by the police. They made a bogus claim in 1973. Somebody reported that I attempted to burn down some PNC activist home. Of course, it was a total lie. Police came looking for me one morning. I went to the rice field back down. When I come, the neighbors at the back street telling me, "Don't go home, the police looking for you." I said, "Me? For what?" And then I learned that there was an allegation against me that I attempted to burn down some PNC area. Police come with a jeep, they took me down to 51 police station. I spent a weekend there. Then they took me to Springlands. I spent another couple of days. Then they took me to New Amsterdam. For about 2 or 3 weeks, I was in the lockup. But my story is not.
And how,
really-
how did you get it? The PPP, of course.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you know,
They
who
had
was the lawyer then? That
Mohendranath Punai at the time. I don't know if you ever heard that name.
No,
Yeah,
definitely not.
Yes. He was the one who defended us. But
you got charged?
yes,
You got charged with
Yes.
arson?
Yes.
We're looking at a former arsonist here.
The boy I went to jail together, so what are you talking?
yeah. No, I'm just mentioning because,
That's good.
and you know, it's the first time I experienced what jail looks like. You know, it's such a dehumanizing thing. You're in the cell. They wouldn't allow you to go out.
I know.
You know,
Yeah,
I know.
I had that experience 3 times.
Yeah. So I'm just mentioning that this country went through a very, very difficult period, and it has such an impact on me as a young man growing up. And I am not alone. I mean, there's so many other people who were harassed, locked up, jailed, beaten, terrorized. So this country went through a very, very difficult period, not to mention the other things where people suffer from lack of jobs, discrimination, victimization. To get goods, you have to beg your way to get bags. You got to get twine. I was a farmer. We used to grow a little rice. You can't get bag, you can't get twine. Everything you want, fertilizer, you had to be giving somebody some money. The shopkeeper got to beg to get goods. And you know, when you think back about those days, we have to be very, very lucky that we have reached this point in this country today, where I would say that there is democracy. And but the democracy cannot be taken for granted because we saw what happened.
But Hydar, why would anybody want to burn down a school? That affects small children. That affects their future. The conclusion seemed to be that 2 schools were deliberately set on fire.
Well, the police said the one at Christchurch was
deliberately
deliberately set.
Uh-huh.
That came out of the police investigation, the fire service
after all we've
investigation.
been through in the 60s and 70s, people want to burn a school?
Well, that's a nonsense in it.
Well, 3 schools burnt within about a year. There was a school that was burnt
Mabaruma.
in Mabaruma. This one here is
St. George's.
St. George's, and now there's 4 schools for that matter.
The big down
Don't
police
forget
station.
the other fire that is in the multilateral, but even all of that, it's such tragedy. It would have had so much history there. Imagine QC, God forbid, that it burned, the kind of history that is in there, students who would have graced it. Mr. Ali, I want to ask you with regards to coming forward, 2023. One cannot discuss the history of Guyana without looking at Irfan Ali and Bar Jagdeo. And you could very well argue that they would have inherited or they would have gotten maybe blessings from this oil. But I want to ask your opinion, your assessment of the governance style of Irfan Ali and Bar Jagdeo, because both of them are leaders within their own right, especially with us at this crossroads, and in context also of what Janet Jagan, Dr. Chetty Jagan, would have had a vision for this country, and the other leaders of the PPP. So my first question along those lines: one, are they holding true to what those people, those leaders would have wanted for this country? And 2, the leadership style of Bar Jagdeo as well as Irfan Ali as the president of Guyana?
Well, I would say that the PPP is guided by a philosophy of governance. And it is, from the very inception of the PPP, it always embraced a pro-poor, a pro-developmental outlook. And I don't think the PPP has departed from that. If you look at this budget has created an environment now for a lot of these things that could not have happened because of the lack of adequate money, resources. We have a budget here that is the biggest in terms of financial allocation. But it's not only the size of the budget that matters. It is also the structure of the budget, how the budget was built. And for the first time, we have money coming in from the carbon credit sales. It will be $150 million that will be added to this budget from carbon sales, plus money coming in from the National Resources Fund. And when you put that together with what we have, we are talking about a big budget, can do a lot of things that we were unable to do in the past. Now, that is significant because what it meant, and I wanted to, I'm not an economist, but I just wanted to make this point. What it meant in effect, that the government is not relying only on taxes. Prior to this budget, roughly about 90% of the revenues for the budget were coming in from taxes.
Taxes, right.
Now, because of the fact that we are getting these big inflows, capital inflows, financial inflows from the oil and petroleum sectors, it means that there will be lesser need to tax the people. And this budget, by the way, with all its size, is not going to have any new taxes.
And I think that was significant.
And that is a significant factor, Freddie, because it is saying to us that we have now entered a new phase of fiscal transfers into the consolidated fund that would not necessarily have to come out of taxpayers' pockets. So what we are seeing in effect in this budget is a situation where there is greater disposable income in the people's pocket. And when you factor in and or monetize all these pro-poor policies that the government is, it is amounting to nearly $90 billion coming out of this budget, going directly into to alleviate or the poor people, then to lift the bottom, as it were. And that is significant. So this budget has a lot of the things that the PPP had embraced. In answer to your question, to pro-poor, raise the bottom, increase like this budget, for example. There's an increase in the tax threshold. There is increases for the nurses, and you would have known the significant increases that the people working in the health sector is getting. And other sectors will also benefit. The President is on record as saying that all public servants is going to be looked at with a view to making the salaries much more competitive than it is now. So things are happening. And I think that the PPP have to be given credit for being in a position to mobilize money. Money is not that easy to mobilize, you know. And to mobilize a budget of this size.
So you would say Barjagdi and Irfan
Oh, yes, I think.
let me start. The President
Yes,
Irfan
yes,
Ali
yes.
and Vice President, they are holding through.
I think so, and they have to be given credit to for the fact that they have been able to move this country into a position now where, you know, just to digress a little, during the 1957 to 64 period, when the PPP was in government, Guyana was considered among the more developed countries. When the PNC came to government, Guyana, that rank dropped to least developed countries. The growth momentum that the PPP had from 1957 to 1964 averaged about 11% growth per annum. All of that, instead of growth, we had negative growth, minus growth for quite a number of years. So in real terms, there was a 50% decline in real wages for the public servants. And when this PPP come back in government in 1992, we begin to see once again. Right? So what I'm saying that you have to give the PPP credit for being developmental and for raising the quality of life and the standard of living of the Guyanese people.
Thank you very much, Freddie.
In 1999, on the Berbice Ferry, so that would be 23 years ago, on the Berbice Ferry, you and I had a discussion in 1999, and you said to me, I always remember it, you said to me, Freddie, we had a disagreement on James Rose, Dr. James Rose, and his role at the university. You said to me, Freddie, the PPP government has to encourage and empower African Guyanese. That should be a policy. You think that 24 years ago conversation we had in the ferry, the PPP is going in that direction?
I think so.
Okay.
Even though I can't remember the discussion in the ferry, but you have a better memory than me. But I think so. Look, if you look at the...
Because these people talking about creeping apartheid.
well, that's Japanese. I don't even want to discuss that. Right? That is not what the discussion on this level. But what I'm saying that if you look at the PPP from the 1950s, the PPP is doing better today than in the 60s in terms of popular and electoral support. PPP never had over 51% of the votes of the popular vote in 61, in 64. We had less than 50%. That's the reason why the PNC-UF coalition in 1964, when they imposed the PR, the proportional representation, they were able to get the government because the PPP never crossed the threshold of 50%. I'm not talking about the 1953 election and the 1957 election. I'm talking about from 61. Today, PPP has been able to cross that 51% threshold, which is saying to us that we were able to get much more crossover votes, if I may use the term, from Amerindians, Afro-Guyanese, mixed, along with Indians. Because as you know, the Indian population is not getting any bigger. And therefore,
it's decreasing.
So to be able to cross that 51 threshold today as opposed to the 1960s, isn't that saying to you that the PPP is doing better in terms of crossover votes, in terms of reaching out to other ethnic groups in the country? I would submit that it is. Notwithstanding what people may want to say, the PPP is doing much better today in terms of its own popular and electoral strength.
Well, what would be your recommendations to the PPP? Let me both Gildarie and I raised this question with Priya Manichan, and she answered it quite adequately. And I think it's a latent situation there that the PPP has to recognize. The PPP lost the 2011 election. They lost the 2015 election. We can't discuss the factors, but I believe one of the latent factors that the PPP has to take in consideration, and Priya Manichan did answer it adequately, and I'm asking you now. You shouldn't, the PPP in this new dispensation, should it be extra sensitive to bad behaving PPP officials, both in the public sector and in the PPP, and nip that thing in the bud? People who carry themselves in such a way, and when they are spoke to, you know who I am? I mean, I know.
That is not a PPP kind of discipline that we have been inculcating in our supporters and people who become. The PPP has always been based on service and humility in service too. Humility in service, not just service, right? And therefore,
but you agree that they should confront that kind of
anybody who behave in that way is not behaving in the best interest of the PPP, because the PPP don't condone those kinds of behavior, right? Arrogance and so don't have a place in the PPP.
And throwing your weight around.
No, all that is not a PPP kind of ethos, morality. This party has always been built on service, and selfless service too, not service with expectation of any big reward in government. And I would say this has been the strength of this PPP. And I have been in the party for a long time. And I know that people who don't have absolutely any expectation of getting anything from the PPP, they are the ones who sometimes go out more out of their way to ensure that the PPP is in government. So what you're saying there is that something that is what the PPP encourages or take nicely or kindly to. And I don't think it's that widespread to. I don't think it's that widespread.
But I think you have to, as a modern country, though. I think what Freddie is referring to is something we should not allow arrogance or anything to creep in. Not because
I agree with
right,
that. I agree
and we
with
have
that.
to be watchful of that. But I want to ask you, Freddie has used a word to describe you and him and put you in the same boat, you and him. He didn't say dinosaur, and he can tell you the word back again. But yes, that's it. And don't ask me to pronounce it, please. I can't do that with Mr. Hydar. He's been around for a long time. Look, one of my concerns about this country, and as you get older, people start thinking pension. They start thinking about university savings for the kids, that they would have they save for that you'll be able to pay those fees and so on. We also have another category which is emerging, and I'm a little worried about that because there's really no figures to really pinpoint how many single parents, single moms especially, that is in Guyana. But my understanding that it's quite significant. But those are the vulnerable part of society. If you were to say to the government that I would like to see certain measures taken place, in the context of figures, recently, and I bring this in context also with the budget that we recently see, Freddie Kissoon was to raise it, and I raised it too, and I think many people, when you have all age pension coming out, and I think there was about $2,000 increase.
No,
That's public assistance from 14 to 16.
Yeah, that public assistance.
And I
Pension
think
is 5,000.
Yeah, 5,000. What would be a good figure that we're looking at? And if you are to say to the government, hey, could you find $5 billion to put it in that area? Where would you put it? I would like to hear your thoughts, especially with there's so many people. Yes, you're looking, there's a big budget, and a lot of the money is going into infrastructure. And I understand very clearly the difficulties of government of balancing where to put the money. Where do you put the money, really? But I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think the government is making a genuine effort to come to the rescue of these people who are, as it were, on the margins of the society, people, single parent, people, the vulnerable groups. And I think, as I said, when you look at how much money has gone to alleviate poverty, to bring up the bottom, look at these very categories you're talking, it is amounting to quite a lot of money.
It is.
And you have to understand that there is always a finite envelope that any government will have to operate with. Money is not, is not unlimited, and therefore the government has to make sometimes some difficult choices.
Difficult choices, right?
Very difficult choices because take the pension. For example, I'm a pensioner. Freddie's a pensioner. You have a long way to go, right?
And when you reach here, you may not need it because you have so much.
Well, I don't know. but what I'm saying, when under the PNC government, the pension, old age pension was a pittance. You couldn't even buy a loaf of bread properly. Maybe I mean, but when you look at it, and then there was the means test. Not everybody could get that pittance. The means test was cracked by the.
But that is then. That is then. We got
but we have
to look at what obtains now.
Yeah, but let's face it. Let's face it. $33,000, and remember that's non-contributory. There are not very many countries that are doing that. Non-contributory pension. It's not like NIS.
Right. That was not a story.
Once you're a Guyanese and you have a Guyanese birth certificate,
you get it.
You get $33,000, which is 100 and 150. No. Yes? Over 150 US dollars.
Yes.
Right?
Uh-huh.
150 US dollars as pension. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this is a huge sum. I mean, but when you consider how we evolve to where we
To
are.
where we are, right, right.
When I was working in the 1980s, the salary was less than 100 US a month.
I looked at that budget, and
And no pensioners are getting.
I looked at that budget, and it's let me see if I can get the right word. It's an acceptable budget,
Okay.
and it's going in the right direction.
Okay.
But Hydar, let me go on to Creole now. Oh, Hydar, he increased public assistance from 14,000 to 16. Oh, Hydar, even the budget expert that was here as our guest, Bhagwan
It's always, I understand.
Oh, man,
it is,
put it on your
Yeah,
20, man.
Yeah.
Oh, Hydar,
It will get
2,000.
there, man. It will get there.
It's always
But
a juggling
you know,
act. It's
it
always-
gotta
I
be-
want,
It will be incremental. And let me tell you, as the resources come in, and it will come in because the projections are good.
Well,
Right? Then we will
the
be in a
Natural
pos-
Resource Minister said
Uh.
yesterday, you don't see money coming in yet
Yes.
from oil.
That's
You're
correct.
gonna see,
So
Yeah, it is indeed
Right,
true.
so-
So you have to have
yeah,
some
it is right,
patience.
right,
You have to
right,
have
right.
some patience, Freddie.
but in the meantime,
you have to have
them
some.
public assistance people might die.
No, man. No.
Yeah.
I want to get on to something.
We got about 3
important.
minutes more, so we'll be very quick.
Hydar.
Uh-huh.
Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, came here in 2020. Then last year, the President went to the United States. I believe both visits were determined by American security interests vis-a-vis China. Should we go back to the old days where superpowers are competing with each other and third world countries join when Jawaharlal Nehru and Nkrumah and Sukarno, Indonesia, founded the non-aligned movement? Small countries in the third world, shouldn't they try to seek what they can get from global powers and just keep out of geopolitical rivalry?
But I think
Don't we need China
I
too?
think that is what the PPP and the PPP civic is doing. That is what the president has said, that look, there's a role for China as there is for the United States, as there is for any other country in Guyana's development. And the government is open to investment from all of these countries. There is nothing to suggest that that this government has a preference for China over the United States or United States over China or any other country. That position is very, very clear as far as this government is concerned and my understanding of it.
Thank
So
you
there's
very
no-
much. Yes, I think I would have heard that, and that's a position that Guyana
But
has
should
to
be a
take.
position of the third world. The
Well,
third
well,
world
but-
needs development and it needs to.
Look,
if
I mean, I know you want to close up the program,
yeah.
but look, a trade delegation only came the other day from Jamaica to Guyana. And you should hear what the man is saying about Guyana. Sometimes we are not singing our praise loud enough. The man said that Guyana now is going to be the what do you call the capital for development in this region
I think even wider across, maybe even in
and
South
even
America.
beyond.
Yeah.
the sad thing about that is you and I reach the age where we
You want
can't
things we don't
benefit-
overnight.
where we can't
Yeah,
benefit
but I
from that.
understand. Yeah,
Look,
yeah.
but Hydar, we got a little bit time left.
No, we
in
don't.
my- yeah?
1 minute.
In my closing remarks, you did two things that were different in this program. You introduced us to something I didn't know. I have to go and check. Village Knot, N-O-U-G-H.
Number not.
Number Knot. I'm going. Secondly, you're the first person to guess that wore short jack. Now, since you were wearing short jack from 1994 when you became PS in education, do you have a wardrobe of plentiful short jack
Yes.
that you can give Gildarie?
I would be happy to give Gildarie and you as well because
No, I don't want
You
it. I
don't?
don't want it.
Oh.
I associate it with Bonham.
Oh.
But on you, sure, Jack, you could pass a couple on to.
yes, sure.
Yeah, but Gildarie, would you take it?
I'm not sure where you believe that I have a short
You
look
said-
short jacket in my.
Oh, you
my
got?
wardrobe. No, I'm not sure how you conclude that I.
You said you
I-
got- you
No, no,
said
but
you
you
didn't- you
concluded
said-
I don't that I don't have. And
No,
have
you
the
said
rent.
you got to get some. You can't remember what you said
I
earlier.
can't
I
remember.
assume. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasurable 1 hour talking to Mr. Hydar, former head of the public service in Guyana, retired in 2015. Years of knowledge, also Central Executive Committee member of the People's Progressive Party, been around for a long time, head of the Chedi Jagan Research Center in Kingston there. And so he knows, and of course, a lot of knowledge foreign affairs in Guyana, foreign relations. I would want to say thank you very much to my co-host Freddie Kissoon, who would have led the conversation. Lots of institutional knowledge there as well. You got to have back these guys, because if you're talking history, you got to go back to the people who knows and who would have been there in the trenches. Both of these gentlemen on my right would have been in the lockups. Several times, Mr. Hydar, but 3 weeks. No jokes. In the history of things, these are people who played a role, and while we could joke about it, it is where our country went in the old days. As we go forward, it is a place that we don't want to be. Wherever you are, I want to say good night to you. Stay safe on the roadways. We can be back with you on Monday. Let's see where this goes. Budget is continuing next week, the budget debates rather, and you're going to hear questions on the expenses, expenditures. What is government spending the money on? Pay attention, pay rapt attention. You want to know where your money is going. Ladies and gentlemen, take care until then.